Well, welcome back, everybody. Just thought I'd shoot a quick update video here. As you can see, the motor's out. Gonna do some cleanup in here. I'm gonna change a couple of things around on the brakes, and I also need to attach a hose to the brake pressure gauge that's gonna mount in the dash, so I gotta figure out that stuff. And yeah, just do some basic cleanup. I've installed the bulkhead connectors for the power feed through the firewall. Pretty much decided that my wiring harness is going to come through this area here, and so hopefully that'll be nice and clean and I can keep things neat and tidy. So the fuel pressure regulator goes right there. I'm probably going to mount a Rife sensor block here that'll do my fuel pressure, engine oil pressure, and map sensor input, as well as coolant temperature, all on one block. And then probably somewhere in here, or I'm not exactly sure where yet, but somewhere in that general vicinity will be the EGT bulkhead connectors. So yeah, just got to clean it up. Gonna mount the radiator. You know, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done that's just a lot easier to do with the engine out. So here we are with the engine out. And then going inside the car, a couple of minor things that I've done. I've installed door switches, so I'll have dome lights. They'll provide a negative trigger to the PDM, which will then turn on the dome light. There'll also be a dome light button on the keypad on the console. And then I've also mounted my Davis VPS vehicle position sensor. So that's a 6-axis device that monitors and data logs the car position as I go down the track. So just, you know, a few things that have happened. Made some decisions on bending the aluminum for the console. That's going to happen when I get a chance to get over to my buddy's shop and use his big monstrous press brake. So yeah, I figured I'd just bring you up to date. What I'm basically doing is I'm installing every component in the car that's going to have a wire going to it. And so today, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fuel cells out, and I'm going to install the trunk supports. Hopefully you can kind of see that. This is actually a different one that I'm not going to use, but I'm going to use these hydraulic trunk supports. I'm going to install those today, get that done. I'm going to install a light switch probably right here for the trunk lid light, that sort of stuff. Then I'll put the fuel cells back in. I have wired up the lights. I've tested them using my handy dandy power probe. Everything works good. Same thing in the front, the headlights, park lights, all that stuff is hooked up and working. So that's where we are as of today. And, you know, I'll bring you back as things progress, but I just wanted to give you kind of a quick update. So thanks for watching.
3 days later.
So we're working on cutting out the holes for the face plates for the exhaust gas temperature probes. They're going to go in here, so we've got to cut these holes out and make sure that we've got enough room to get our connections in there. So we're just going to kind of finish this last one off here. And I just use a Dremel tool with a small cutoff wheel for this kind of stuff. It works relatively well. It's slow, but it's fairly accurate, and it's just easier than using a big death wheel on such small cuts. Okay, well, we got those basically cut out. I'll trim up the edges with a file and clean them up a little bit, but I think we're going to be in good shape. Looks like we'll have plenty of clearance. And then I'll go through with a transfer punch, punch all the holes, and then I'm going to put this on with nutserts and 832 screws. So it should be pretty straightforward, but you know, just all of the little parts that go into building a car the way you want it, right? So anyway, when we come back to something interesting, I'll bring you back. Okay, so I'm just checking for clearance here, making sure that everything's going to fit, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape the aluminum frames in place, just because they're too hard to hold without moving around to mark the holes, and when you're using nutserts, the holes have to be pretty accurately drilled, otherwise it's hard to get the screws started. And so I'm going to tape this in place and then just kind of free up a hand, I guess, you know, to so I don't have to hold the thing and get my transfer punch. And as it is, the transfer punch is going to be tough in those tapered holes, and I think we're going to see that I run into an issue here. But I'm making sure it's level. I have a thing about leveling things and things that need to be straight and stuff. I don't know, call me OCD or whatever, but it's one of my things. Like, if you're going to mount something for the extra few seconds it takes to make it straight, I mean, why not? So now I've moved it all over the place, but I didn't have my tape ready. So, you know, this is I'm thinking more about making the video than I am about what I'm doing here. So this is part of the problem when you make YouTube videos and try and build stuff at the same time. You're thinking about, is it in the shot, and you know, how does this look, and at this particular time, you may have noticed that I'm overdubbing the sound here, because after I turned off the microphone, after all that filing, I forgot to turn it back on. So this entire couple minutes of video was basically shot with no audio. So have to do a little bit of voiceover here, but you get the idea. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting that thing taped in place and just checking to make sure it's level and where I want it and stuff. And you know, it's a little finicky, but it is what it is. And so, you know, once I'm happy with where it is and I know it's not going to move around too much on me, then you know, I'll go ahead and use a transfer punch in those holes. And one of the things that I ran into when I did this, and because I'm doing this voiceover, hindsight is 20/20, you see those holes are tapered, and when you put a transfer punch in a tapered hole like that, it doesn't have much edge of the hole to center itself on. And I managed to get the top four kind of dead on, and two of the bottom ones I got dead on. And then the two bottom ones in the middle, the one on the right, that one, I missed by not much, maybe a half a millimeter or so. But this one, I don't know how I did it, but I managed to drill the hole in this thing probably a millimeter off of where it needed to be. So I ended up having to fix that. But it's part of the process, and it is what it is. The other thing I did wrong here that and I don't know why I did it again. I'm thinking about making the video and not about what I'm doing maybe. But normally I would drill all of those holes with a small bit, like an 1/8 inch or something like that, and then go to a larger bit, and it just helps you keep the hole dead centered where you want it. And I didn't do that on these. I just went immediately to the big bit for the finished hole size, and that was a big mistake. And I can see in this video that I'm drilling this crooked, and now I know why that hole, because the drill moved, it walked, and it's just I screwed this up, so I had to fix it later, and you'll see it turned out just fine. And you know, it wasn't like off by a country mile or anything, but yeah, learn from your mistakes, and so these are some of mine, and so hopefully you'll learn from my mistakes and not have to make the same ones on your car. So anyway, I'm just going to drill these these remaining holes out of these panels, and then we'll move on with some stuff and there'll actually be real-time audio on it. So yeah, again, I don't claim to be an expert at really anything, and I make plenty of mistakes, and I'm not afraid to let you see them. So here they are. And some of these, if it looks like, you know, this is pretty heavy duty metal, it's because I'm drilling through two thicknesses. The original firewall is behind my finished flat firewall. I just welded it in over top, and so it's very tight together, but it is two thicknesses of metal. So here we go. Our holes drilled. We're just gonna go ahead and put all the nutserts in, and this tool requires a fair amount of force, so I got to use two hands with it. But there it is. This is the tool I'm using. I bought it on Amazon. It does all the small stuff, 632, 832. My other one does 1024. This one will do small metrics with a different mandrel in it, so it works good for this kind of stuff. But it is like a lot harder to squeeze than my other tool. It's got longer handles, so leverage is your friend, I guess. Now, let me just stand up here and see if we can't put a little grunk on it. So one of the things you can do to give yourself a little more leverage is not thread. The nuts are on as far as it'll go, so we've got this thread sticking out the end here. If I just thread in, you know, I give myself a little bit extra. So what I can do is I can turn this barrel out and then I lock this down in a different position. That gives me a little bit more leverage. I just like using nutsers because they're clean, simple, reliable. Like, this is really low stress stuff. This isn't going to get a lot of force or anything on it. All nutsers can be very strong. Man, this thing is hard to squeeze. And just go through and repeat the process. In this case, 8 times, and I have 4 more to put in for the bulkhead connectors for the main engine harness. It's part of building these things. We're paying attention. I used to have my catch can for the engine oil ventilation here, and obviously it's gone. Well, it's gone because I looked high and low for a good place to put these bulkhead connectors, and there weren't many options. So there's where we are. That's where it ended up being. And now I gotta find a place to mount that catch can, or peak tank as some guys call it. I see what's happening here is I'm going through 2 layers of metal. And that's what's making this thing so hard to squeeze. Oh. It's in there. All right, one left. Okay. Now all we got to do is fit the plate, put the connections in it, and we'll move on over here. Okay, here's where we see how accurate my holes were. See if the screws all line up. So far, so good. And for those that may be unfamiliar with what this thing is that I'm bolting on here, this is the bulkhead connector for the thermocouples that go to my exhaust gas temperature probes. And it looks like I am a little bit off on a couple of these holes. So we may have to do some minor adjusting here, but we'll see how this goes. These are all starting just fine. No problem. Just these two holes are a little bit, like I'm talking, I don't know, 1.5 millimeters maybe, something like that. So the only way to fix this at this point is to move the hole in the plate, and thankfully I don't have to move it so far, so I don't even think nobody's ever going to even notice it. But yeah, it's just a little too, I've got the holes a little too high. Like, I mean, man, it's close. But you know, when it comes to bolting this stuff in, you know, sometimes you just don't quite hit your target, and that's what happened in this case. Is my center punch, or I used a transfer punch on here, but because these holes are tapered, it didn't really translate very well. So I'm gonna have to move this one up. If I have a pin here I can mark it with, so I got to go and get that. But what I'll do is I'll mark these holes, and I've got to move this one up about maybe 1 millimeter. This one's okay. This one's got to go up also maybe 1 millimeter, maybe even 2 millimeters. So I'm a fair bit off on this one. So that's what I'll do. I'll take these out. I'll go and enlarge these holes a little bit, give me a little bit of room to work with, and bring you back. Okay, well, I got them in. I didn't video tightening down the screws, but I mean, we all kind of know how that goes. So that's where the main wiring harness for the engine is going to disconnect, and then that's where the EGTs are going to go. And what's cool about that wiring harness, let me just get around the lift here. What's cool about this wiring harness is if I need to take the motor out, all I got to do is take this off. My wiring harness stays on the motor. I go to put it back on, and once I get it lined up, this goes on just like that. And these are amphenol connectors. I bought them from Maven Motorsports, and they're They're a nice connector. They're a pain in the ass to pin because each one of them has got like, I don't remember, 36 pins or something to that effect. So I got to cut the harnesses, I got to pin both sides, but at the end of the day, it'll all be worth it, and the time it'll save me later on. Boy, I suck at filming this. Anyway, just give you a look at that. And those are the bulkhead connectors for the main battery connections that are going to go to the engine block and the starter and the radiator fans and all that kind of stuff. I also got the holes drilled to mount the radiator, and I got its isolators put in, so we got that done. So we're making progress. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off the brakes. I changed out the line lock solenoid for something that I like a little better, and it required making some new lines. So I get those built and reattached and get the brakes bled for the last time, hopefully, and that'll be done too. So yeah, that's where we are, and I think next we'll get the brakes done. Maybe I'll show you that when it's finished, and get this thing cleaned up under here, and I have to figure out where to mount the catch can that I took out. So over here is this Motion Raceworks catch can, and that little filter right there goes on top of this, and I did have it mounted like right up there, and it worked good there. It was kind of in the way of the battery terminal, and the drain wasn't very handy, so I'm not exactly sure where it's going to live, but it might find a home up here someplace now. So I'll figure that out. I think once I get the motor back in, more than likely I'll have to remake the lines that go from the valve covers and the valley breather, but you know.
3 weeks later.
So earlier I had mentioned I had needed to run a hose through the firewall for a brake pressure gauge that's going to go in the dash, so that's what that is. And then that is the new Hurst roll control solenoid that gives me a line lock for the front brakes, so when I do burnouts and stuff I can just hold the brake pressure with a button on the front wheels and let the back ones go. So it's got 2 wires on it, those red and black wires down there. That goes to the control unit in the vehicle, and then these 2 orange and white wires are for my brake light switch, which is down there. So that's kind of how that all happened. And you've seen the rest of the stuff that's mounted. And I mentioned earlier about the catch can going to have to change locations, and I lost the audio on that, so I'm just going to kind of recover that. I think the catch can is over here, and I think this is going to live, I don't know, somewhere in here, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but somewhere in there. And then these 2 lines, they will hook up to, on the motor, they will hook up to these quick release outlets here from Motion Raceworks. And this line comes and it tees into this one that goes into the valley cover. So there's a breather in each valve cover and the valley cover, and then the other side obviously has another one of those connections. And then so this line has a T here, it goes to the can, that line goes to the can, and that's going to be crankcase ventilation, which I think should be plenty. And then the next video, I'm debating on whether or not this mechanism that I made to tighten up the alternator belt on this car is going to be adequate, and maybe I need to add a turnbuckle or something instead. So I've got to do some research and figure out what I need to do there, but that'll be the next video probably. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and we'll bring you back as things progress.